All right. Well, good morning, everybody. While we wait for Noah, who's our co-chair, to get on, I just wanted to introduce everybody to Sam Baker from Clark County. Sam had asked if she could just talk for a second and introduce a survey that they're doing down there in Clark County. So Sam, welcome to the group and welcome this morning. If you want to talk about what you're doing briefly with All In Clark County and the input that you're looking to get right now, that would be helpful. Please go ahead.
Awesome, I appreciate it. So I'm Sam Baker. I'm the Sustainability Program Administrator for Clark County. And we are in the process of doing a number of sustainability related initiatives. But right now we're really focused on putting together a community plan that is informed by community members. We want to make sure that it's transparent and equitable, and that people who want to have a voice have a voice. And we're trying to reach about 3,000 people with our survey that we're doing right now. And we're only at like 1,100. So I'd like to put out the request that you all take the survey if you live in Clark County, but also if you have networks within Clark County, if you could share the survey with your networks. I'm going to go ahead and put the survey in the chat right now. But we would really appreciate it. Like I said, this process is meant to be equitable. We want community members to be involved and feel like they have a voice, and also, educate people and increase climate literacy. So this survey kind of does both. It gets their input, but it's also educational at the same time.
Sam, is there a date that you want the responses due by?
Yeah, January 12th is going to be when we close the survey. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And Sam, did you guys have a little flyer or suggested wording for folks if they wanted to share the survey with their networks?
Yes, we do. And I believe it would be better for me to send that via email, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you send it to myself or Kayla, we can get it out to the group.
Okay, awesome. I'll do that right after the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, so I see that I'm not seeing Noah on our call yet, but what we wanted to do today is just go over kind of where we ended up with our last meeting. And I know, it might have felt a little bit free flowing there, but I think it was helpful if you take a look at the different the stickies that we have and the voting. I think there really was a coalescence around a top, say, 5 issues that we wanted to sort of tackle as this group. And so, just in terms of what those top issues were, part of the reason why I'm hanging out a little slow waiting for Noah had put together the presentation for us. So I don't have the slides to share at the moment. But the top issues had come up as water conservation, energy, climate action, sustainability and social equity, and then sustainability plans and planning for schools and cities and communities. And so, if we take a look at those, like just say water conservation, we've got 2 words that we focused in on as sort of an issue that we want to work on as a working group. But I think what we wanted to do today is sort of think about those top issues that have popped up and really come up with maybe an objective statement for each of them. When it's water conservation, what within water conservation would be an objective for us as a group? And then, going back again to the milestones, that have been set out for each of the working groups or the working groups going forward. I think we've got time between now and having that menu of options input that we want to have available for NDEP in March. We've got time to work over the next few months on, okay, here's our objective with water conservation. What are specific, what are some of the major action items or strategic actions that we want to work on, and then what are really the specific items for that menu of options. And so and I guess whoever's on the phone, the 3833, thanks. What we want to do is take a look at each of those 5 sort of stickies, that sort of broad issue that we want to work on, and think about, okay, what's the objective within that? Because I think really, what we want to do next, after this meeting, we'll send a survey to everyone and ask you what group, what we're thinking. And I guess I'm open to input if folks think there might be a different direction that we want to go in. But on those 5 main topics, what we'd like to do as follow-up to this meeting is send out a survey asking everybody for, kind of we think that will break up into different working groups, like sub-working groups on these different topics. And so ask everybody for, your feedback in terms of what specific topics you want to work on. And then also, some of your expertise that you can help bring to the different topic areas. So, and then I think the other thing that's really important for us, especially at this point, is thinking about the data needs. If these are the issues that we want to work on, what's the data that we need to help inform developing action plans? Is there information that we need? Is there data? Would it be helpful on one of these calls, or maybe, for a little bit, we would have to meet more frequently than once a month, but, are there speakers that we want to have come in to help us think through some of these different topics? I know climate action was one that popped up. Do we want somebody from the governor's office? Kristen Averett worked on the state climate plan. Would we want somebody to come in like Kristen to talk about that? So, just thinking about potential speakers that we would want on these different issues for, helping us move forward on these different issues and coming up with the menu of options. So hopefully that's a process that makes sense to everybody. And I think what we'd like to do today is just really take a look at each of those stickies that we had on the last call, and think about really trying to come up with the objective statements. And I think, be thinking forward too, in terms of kind of getting back to our original survey where we asked, well, who are the audiences that we want to focus in on? Is it state government or local government, and helping government be the leader by example on certain issues? Is it focusing in on the business community and trying to come up with particular strategies or action items for that menu of options that would focus in on the business community? Or is it the general public and the general population of the state, and outreach and education and awareness, and trying to help that audience? And so I guess in terms of thinking about how we put together our specific action items, be thinking ahead towards, who the audiences you think are most important to reach within each of these issues and topic areas. So I guess, with that, why don't we take a look at that first one was water conservation. And so, and again, those sticky notes, I know people populated some sticky notes as we were doing the voting, and also, we used the original survey to help with identify some of those topic areas. But as people on the call today think about water conservation as a topic that we as a group wanted to try to address, what within water conservation is an objective, kind of an objective statement that we would want to develop, so that would really help guide us in terms of action items and strategies and things like that as we move forward over the next couple of months. So I'll open up the floor on water conservation. I see Marco's helping me out. He's got his hand up already. So Marco, go ahead.
For the benefit of conversation, let me ask a question or answer a question with a question. Okay. What would we do outside of what SNWA or TUMWA or other entity like Carson Subconservancy District isn't doing already?
In terms of establishing the objective?
In terms of establishing, for water conservation purposes. Because there are already a lot of robust programs out there that are, I would argue, pretty effective. And not to say that this isn't something that wouldn't be a focus, or there might be some other area to work on. Perhaps it's like maybe pushing the reduction of non-functional turf in southern Nevada, or doing things to do more or less the same for the Truckee River watershed or the Carson or Walker River watersheds. All of those things could be further explored, but I just wanted to throw that out there because there's certainly quite a bit of activity going on.
Right. Thanks. Good point. And I think too, that your comments kind of raise another issue too, where there might be some really good things going on in one part of the state that other parts of the state could learn and benefit from. And maybe that's another area where it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel or coming up with new things, but coming up with, how do we as a group help, maybe share some of the good examples and get other areas of the state to follow some good leads. So Aster, you're on mute.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's just a suggestion, just a thought. Is it not beneficial to go to see the water conservation, energy conservation, and other elements the group selected is relevant in the context of sustainability, to see it in the lens of one is sustainability management, material management concept, because we are in that. I started focusing on that term. So we need to recognize, what's going on with the conservation in terms of waste management. Is it a waste there? Sustainable consumption in production, resource productivity, or green growth strategy, which is infrastructure, how we use water for our lawn or something, whatever it is relevant for sustainable material management, how we view, how we discuss water conservation, energy conservation, whatever it is a group selected to focus, because this will help us to frame it within the concepts of that, because we are going to talk in another discussion, for example, we focus on the new economy, for example, and then everything will tied up. That's what I want to say is, when we say economy, efficiency, social equity, whatever you said, can we go under in the concept of saving resources under this SMM, and then and then discuss for each what is the thing we need to do. As a waste management, for example, there is a waste of energy, there is a waste of water, whatever. It is what is the thing we do we can save there? Resources, because we focus resources to save resources so that we can use it sustainably. I think under this, maybe. Yeah. Thank you. If I'm clear, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that I know Kayla and Darren are on the call. I think that certainly the idea of sustainable materials management is important and one that they want to have focused on, but I don't think it's exclusive to sustainable materials management. You know, that if the group sees it as a broader issue, that they would be okay with that. You know, and I guess so. I mean, water conservation is something that came up in the survey results that we had put together, and I think that you know, maybe some of the folks who had originally put that in their survey results would want to speak up, kind of what some of the issues were that they were thinking about. And then also just want to point out, I see that Kayla did put up the mission statement. So, and Kayla, that's the mission statement for the Partners for Sustainable Nevada? Okay, and go ahead.
Yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, so that is the mission statement for the entire Partners for Sustainable Nevada stakeholder group, not just, you know, the definition of sustainability that you guys created during your last meeting. And yeah, I want to touch a little bit on Marco's comment. You know, there's a lot of other places that are doing a lot of really important and, you know, productive work on water conservation. And maybe another way to look at this, you know, objective statement exercise is how can we bring highlight to those different efforts, you know, and maybe what is lacking as a statewide. If there's something going on in Clark County, how can we, you know, propose that to enhance that effort on more of a statewide level, or if someone needs more support. Just a thought, you know, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, you know, with trying to create something new for water conservation, but if there's some way that we can highlight or help these other, you know, entities further their water conservation efforts as well, is this perhaps maybe another way to look at it? I don't know if that muddies the water.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Kayla, and thanks for putting that up in the chat too. Do we have it? Okay. I'd seen other hands raised, but I don't. So I guess in terms of, you know, some of the, Lakshmi, I see you raised a hand here, so I'll let you go ahead.
My question was just something you alluded to earlier. I would love to learn about the already existing programs for water conservation. So if we can make a list somewhere or something, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And you know, Marco pointed it out already that there's a lot going on, especially in Southern Nevada, but other areas of the state as well. And you know, maybe again, that's somewhere that some folks on this group would want to have some speakers come in to talk about some of the sort of more novel or innovative things that are being done, because you know, from all of our different vantage points of where we live, we may not be familiar with everything that's going on across the state. So having some speakers from Southern Nevada come in and talk about some of the things that are being done down there might be really helpful to this overall group. Let's see, I saw a hand. Alexia?
Okay, thank you. Just to go along with what you're saying, Chris, about inviting members from industry to come and kind of present to us what they do, I think, and this is significant, that I think they should also present to us what they need and what they lack. Because if we're going to work on, you know, sustainability for Nevada, and then, you know, all of the information that each of these working groups are coming up with are going to be funneled to the policy and funding working group. I think it would really help clarify for the, the bigger picture here, if we have an understanding of what's lacking or what's needed, what sort of roadblocks are in the way preventing, the experts in their fields from doing the things that they need to do. So I would maybe include that in the conversation about having presenters. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's a great point. And maybe even going back to you, Marco, I don't know if, as you have conversations with Southern Nevada Water Authority and others down in Southern Nevada, if you ever even hear those kind of comments about, what are some of the things that they need or lack?
And I'm trying to think, maybe there's a way, and how this connects to some of the other groups that are part of this is, maybe some of the things that we're doing here locally would be of use or of value to other communities, or other entities. I mean, I'm sure some of this is going to be like well, why aren't we doing it already type of a thing, but maybe this is one of those things that ultimately this group or end up as an agency or department of the state can put into a bill draft request. I mean, if it's like requirements for xeriscape or replicating the Cash for Grass incentive program in the Truckee Meadows, for example. I mean, that was really popular, and that helped save billions of gallons of water. I say that as a snowstorm is bearing down on Reno, but at the same time, during the drought months, or during the months where that are hotter, and as we endure drought, maybe it makes sense to have some type of program similar to that in other parts of the state or other jurisdictions to and to promote xeriscaping or drought tolerant landscaping where it makes sense. I mean, that could be one example there, and then maybe to go along with that, the regulatory framework or the structure for such agencies to adopt to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, some of these things may be issues that in Northern Nevada, we haven't had to deal with as much. And so, as you deal with more drought and you deal with a change in climate that, we had the most 100+ degree days in Reno this summer. So, it may be that, other parts of the state need to catch up with where Southern Nevada has been just because of the changing climate and sort of the changing conditions. Lauren, I see that you put in something into the chat, and it's a great idea there. Statement: amplify and scale existing effective efforts of maintaining a sustainable and equitable water supply that balances resources and current and growing needs with important quality of life options and access for all Nevadans. What do folks think about that as say a objective for water conservation? Turning that sticky note that just said water conservation and expanding it. And Lauren, go ahead if you want to speak a little bit more to what you put up there.
Yeah, happy to. That's what I was trying to do, is just kind of capture some of these thoughts into an objective statement. I completely agree with Marco. When you read through the priorities, I was like, water conservation, we already have like this award, like globally renowned program in Southern Nevada, right? But I also think if we're calling ourselves Partners for a Sustainable Nevada, how can we not deal with water conservation and drought issues? And if they're not covered by the other groups, it's something that we should absolutely at least address. And so I thought scale and amplify maybe got towards that point. And I think Marco's second comments would be perfect things that we could do as sort of, goals under this objective that intersect already with, say, the education working group or the policy working group. So yeah, I was just trying to kind of capture an umbrella statement and throw something out there for wordsmithing and feedback.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. And I think, again, our working group is sustainability, and so we've got sort of that very broad topic, and whereas some of the other working groups, you know, they're diving in on composting and you know, organics, and others are working on recycling. Ours, we've kind of got that big open slate, and so you know, that can be nice, but it can also be kind of difficult to make sure that we sort of corral ourselves. So when it's water conservation, I think the other obvious to get input from or hear from is going to be even within NDEP. You know, there's the water bureaus, and hearing from them and making sure that you know, seeing how we could help, or you know, how this partnership can move forward, maybe some of their objectives. So I guess I'll open it up in terms of the statement that Lauren has put in the chat. What do people think about using that as a way forward for turning that sticky note of water conservation into an actual topic that we want to work on as a working group?
I like it.
All right. Well, let's see what you know, and I see that I'm scrolling through the chat notes myself, so I see some thumbs up and some agreed this is a great place to start. So thank you, Lauren, and I think we'll use that as going forward, and then we'll, like I said, one of the things that we'll do after this meeting is survey folks to see sort of which subgroups you want to work on. And so, you know, if water conservation was one of those topics that you brought up and want to work on, please volunteer to work on this group. And I see some comments about the nexus between water and energy, and that's certainly one that has come up before. And I think we even have some potential speaker ideas. Again, down in Southern Nevada, I think probably we've got some real national experts and some leaders in terms of that topic between energy and water and the distribution of water. So maybe we can have somebody come in and talk to the subgroup about some of the things that are going on in Southern Nevada. All right, so let's use that as our water objective, and then let's move on, because we've got 4 others. So let's move on to the one that was about sustainability planning for cities and schools. And I think that, you know, I'll say my thought with that one would be, you know, we've got different jurisdictions around the state who have done sustainability plans. I think in terms of implementation, some are being implemented, others are not necessarily. And so, you know, I think one of the things, the power of this group and all of the different perspectives that we offer would be, you know, how can we help move some of those plans to more actual implementation and action? You know, are there, again, really getting back to you know, the comment on water conservation, you know, when you have speakers come in, not only what's being done, but what do people need, and what do they lack? And so, you know, how could this group help some of this, either the schools or the cities and towns, move their plans forward into more action? And so, you know, just sharing of ideas. I mean, we've got Sam on here with the All In Clark County and the experience there. We've got Marco and the experience with the city of Las Vegas, and how they've, instead of doing a separate sustainability plan, embedded sustainability elements into the master plan. I know we've had Suzanne on the calls from Reno. So I guess in terms of trying to move something like that forward, what would be a good objective for the concept of the topic around sustainability plans for cities and schools?
I think maybe one way to do it might be helpful to have a quick inventory of what the local agencies that have done sustainability plans or have incorporated or adopted a master plan with sustainability actions, whatever they may be, and have that an idea of what the of what implementation actions are out there that would be appropriate from a state level, just to have an idea and see if there's ways to link a local effort with a state one, or connect the two, whether that's something like multifamily recycling or brownfield mitigation or environmental justice, whatever the case may be. I think that there's a long list, but knowing what some of those things are that might be listed, that are things that either something that the city or counties want to take on in the future with the state as a partner, that might be something worth exploring.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that feedback. And I think you can also see where, the state may, perhaps this group could help the state with developing a sustainability plan for the state, since that's something that doesn't exist right now. That could potentially be one of the types of action items that we would have. Let's see. I see Esther. I see that you have your hand raised.
We work with the Carson City for a couple of 2-3 years. Since 2016, we developed to integrate the sustainability initiatives into their comprehensive plan. But and the one thing they started doing first was opening a web page in their website, and then talk about some information to inform the public, energy saving, water saving, and all those different type of information. I think what I have learned is the different jurisdiction, they have a way of slowly integrating sustainability initiative in their master plan or comprehensive plan. We have already ready, we give them and then to incorporate it, but people, they are not yet understood what sustainability. They think sustainability is a business killer or something like that. So I think what we can do, as my experience, because we work for 4-5 years with them, but my experience is, as this group, they can support the idea of sustainability is not a business killer, profit and all the stuff, but the idea of we all benefit from it. And then that is, I saw here, Kayla, for example, she wrote just we create a collaboration with local and regional planning agencies. That is the best approach. It can be. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I see that Tamara also put in, taking a look at what Envision Utah has done as a state effort, and some of the issues that are addressed through that, and some of the information sharing. And I see also the comment about stars for higher education. And that could be also, a framework. Marco, did the STARS program that the cities went through before go away?
It's been incorporated into Lead for Cities, and City of Reno, City of Henderson, City of Las Vegas are all certified or getting certified.
Okay. And then is there an ongoing commitment with that? That's
kind of the expectation from U.S. Green Building Council, but yeah, I mean, that just happened over the last year or so. It's been, and I know with Reno and Henderson that they've been exploring that already. So that and they're working on that process.
Okay. So in terms of an objective, does it make sense to have? I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but does it make sense to have an objective that would be to assist cities, towns, municipalities, and schools in the state with sustainability planning, both developing plans as well as implementing existing plans and sharing of resources? How can we as a group, I guess, if we set that as an objective, then how can we as a group sort of help advance some of that? I mean, that seems like something that would be doable for this group to help with the identifying resources and sharing resources and helping localities move forward with sustainability planning and actual implementation. Are there other thoughts? Alexia?
Not necessarily a contributing thought, but just trying to tie in what some of the other working groups are doing again. The education group is working on, building that website. And one of the things that we talked about, including, was a sort of clearinghouse of information for people to, for both the public, for industry, for agencies throughout Nevada, whatever, to be able to have sort of a one-stop shop for what's going on in the state of Nevada. Like maybe what are some of the new bills or legislation that's being passed through, or here's who to contact to help your community build a sustainability plan. The exact nature of the clearinghouse isn't clarified yet, but the concept is there. So if something like that exists, I think that might help this group, kind of figure out what kind of information is important to include there for people to access.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm glad you're able to kind of help us know what's going on with that working group. So I think, we'll follow up this meeting writing down some objectives for each of the different areas. But I think that probably the one for sustainability plans is sharing of resources, helping with networking between communities that have done plans, others that maybe haven't done plans and want to get into having a plan, connecting with the state and what the state is doing. And then, also maybe some of the self-reporting and the standards that are out there, and how with that as maybe a broad objective, how can we, help communities learn more about sustainability planning and also advance their existing sustainability plans to implementation. And Alexia, I see you raise your hand again.
Yeah, just kind of an idea to throw out there, but maybe it would be helpful if, we were able to draft a sort of guideline for how to draft a sustainability report. If, a report and a plan. I think those two things are obviously two different things. So, like an outline of the topics that would be most impactful in a plan and a report. Something like that, to make available for people, so people have a place to kind of start from instead of scratching their heads. But I also think that creates some sort of standard, language, so that we're all sort of talking about the same thing, using the same words.
Right. No,
Thank
that's
you.
a great point. Yeah, thanks. And I think these are great ideas for, in terms of as we develop those menu items for the menu of options that I think there are a lot of really great things that we could do under this particular objective of helping with sustainability planning at the local and state level in the state of Nevada. And I think this particular working group is, really well positioned to help move that forward. So another one that comes up is climate action. And I guess what I wanted to do is throw out a question to start that, because another one was energy. And so, do we see energy and climate action as being two separate issues or working areas that we want to focus on? Or is that something that we would want to merge the two into one? Alexia, go ahead.
Hi. So I recently, last week actually, met with Jana from the Nature Conservancy, who's working with the EPA and the Department of Energy, looking at renewable energy resources in Nevada, and open to any and all types of renewable energy resources, but of course looking a little bit more specifically at solar power and geothermal power, as those are two things that Nevada has abundance of. But in doing so, they're looking at not just installing renewable energy sources, but installing other technologies with those renewable energy sources where possible that capture carbon and use carbon as a source of energy, or any kind of implementation of new innovative technology. And while I'm not trying to upsell necessarily, it's just a relevant experience that I had that kind of broadened my view of what exactly is going on. So I think that climate action, which is a verb, an action, it's to do something actively. It would be interesting to maybe reach out to larger agencies too, to see what they're looking at that might help guide our hand in Nevada, to open our minds to new or different types of technologies.
All right. Yeah, technology and technology innovation is definitely, I think, an area that we could focus in on within an issue like energy. Jessica, you also had a comment.
Good morning, all. Similar to what Alexia was relaying, I've been in touch with the governor's people around the climate action plan, the climate initiative that Governor Sisolak kind of started. So one of the things I think we could take a look at is what is the Nevada climate strategy and how we get involved with that or align with that. I think we absolutely need to be aligned closely with that if we're going to look at any action around climate. I think that would be the most powerful way to move forward, is to align with that. They've got some fairly discrete items out there, and certainly collecting data is one of them. So perhaps that could be an actionable piece that we could look at.
Right. Thanks. And I think that's really my initial question is really just, do we want to have something in terms of groups that we focus in on issues? Do we want to have one that's separate on energy and another that's separate on climate action? And, so you could be following up the specific technologies and technology innovation on the energy area, and then separate of that, be really taking a look at the Nevada Climate Action Plan and how we could support that as a group. So, based on those initial two comments, it's almost like we would want to keep these as two separate areas or focuses. Right. I see, Liz, you have your hand up.
I think you just hit it on the head, Chris. My initial answer to your question was to keep them separate, because I feel like energy is really around technology and how we're using it and how we're conserving it, whereas climate action is really how are we going to be resilient as our climate changes. And, just from the viewpoint of a school district, how are they going to deal with all the results of climate change, such as reduced water and higher temperatures for longer periods of time. A lot of the Southern Nevada schools have a lot of outdoor spaces. So how are we going to be resilient and helping those communities and those organizations to be resilient during climate change? So yeah, I agree to keep them separate.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for the feedback. And Brian, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree very much with what Jessica said, which is why I put my hand down. I think she covered the plan, but I guess I would suggest that energy can be thought of in a number of different ways. And one of them is to go after greenhouse gas emissions. And it seems like that is really the core objective, is reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Energy is one strategy or tactic to work on that, but really the category is greenhouse gas emissions. And then climate action, I think as was pointed out there, can be looked at as climate resilience, but it could also be public outreach to get people involved. It could be a lot of things. So I guess I would make greenhouse gas emissions reduction the category that stands alone. Climate action may be something different, resilience, public outreach, et cetera. But really, I would put energy under greenhouse gas emissions reduction. And then within energy, are you also talking about energy use for transportation, which is the primary greenhouse gas source in Nevada, according to its inventory of greenhouse gases. So transportation and energy both need to be considered if they're considered separate, or transportation is a subset of energy. So.
Right, and thanks for those comments. And also, you know, I think that also goes back to some of what you're saying, Brian, also goes back to the sticky notes that we had before. And, you know, if you remember on our last call, you know, I didn't want anybody to feel like any of those particular topics or issues that were on any of the sticky notes were going to go away forever. We've got to kind of narrow our focus and get started somewhere. And so that's why we went through that voting exercise. But I think if you looked at a lot of those sticky notes, and I think that this was a comment that really came up as we were doing the discussion, was, you know, you could kind of group some of those really specific strategies under some of the specifics here. So I know transportation was one that was on the list on a sticky note, and maybe that didn't, you know, get enough votes on its own. But I think it's still something that you're going to want to address as we're talking about menus of options for climate and energy. So, you know, thanks for that comment and that reminder back to our exercise a month ago. So Laura, I see that you're making the case to combine them. Well, maybe you want to expand on your thoughts there.
Yes, thank you. I understand how climate is a lot more than or creating a climate plan is a lot more than just talking about energy. But I think energy is central to the conversation about climate change because of what was just mentioned about the reduction of the greenhouse gases. So the reduction of greenhouse gases is kind of at the core of that. That's why I was thinking it would be easier to, it's just like the justification of why would you want to tackle this climate plan, right? Why do you want to be more resilient? One action plan is to reduce or be more efficient in our use of energy, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. I think that there are a number of topics within energy that you could really dive into. You can dive into efficient use of energy, as well as you know, getting beyond conservation and efficiency, renewables, and talking about, you know, specific technologies, and even getting into transportation issues. But I think in terms of some of the comments that have been made so far, I'd say I'm still leaning towards the idea of trying to keep them separate so that we could look at one group take a look at energy very broadly, from the conservation to alternative sources of energy, clean sources of energy, carbon capture. I think it all feeds into climate in a lot of ways, but maybe so that we can take that sort of deep dive into innovation and technology around energy, we leave that as a separate objective. And then the other objective would be, sort of how this group can help the state with advancing the existing state climate action plan. And, certainly energy strategies are going to be a huge part of that. But, what else could this group help advance or plug and play on? Because there might be very specific action items that we want to come up with and sort of feed to that policy and funding working group in terms of, what happens over the next year and leading into the next legislative session. So then the last one, in terms of, if there aren't any more comments on that, again, we'll try to write something up for each one of these and get those out and sort of have those be part of the next survey that we send. And the last topic area that came up was social equity and sustainability. And I know, everyone, I'm sure, is aware that the current administration the federal administration is very interested in social equity issues. And so, in terms of that being something that actually got a lot of votes from the exercise last month, what would we want to sort of try to boil that down to in terms of an objective around social equity and sustainability? So the floor is open. Alexia, thanks.
Hi. Yeah, of course. One of the things that I think is so incredibly important, and this ties in, of course, to different climate needs, but access to clean, healthy food that's affordable, and staying away from pre-processed packaged things that cause health problems. I think in terms of sustainability and climate action, that's a very significant one. But also, creating the pathways for access to clean and healthy food locally, and creating a sustainable, meaningful sort of breadbasket, I guess you will, in Nevada is something that I think that we should look at most definitely.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. And I'm sure that there are a lot of data needs around that could help inform us as we try to, think about what action items or strategies might make sense for that menu of options. I think that's a great area to focus in on when talking about social equity. What are some other thoughts that people have?
I think this is a big one, and harder to kind of, I think absolutely like healthy food deserts, things like that should be under it, but I think the umbrella statement is going to be pretty hard. I was trying to come up with something to throw into chat like I did before. I was a bit all over the place. I mean, I think our focus here is, even though we talk about triple bottom line, is still been pretty heavy on environmental, which is fine. It's great. But this is the place where we bring in those other pieces. So to me, it has to be something that talks about addressing the inequities and disparities of vulnerable populations, maybe regardless of like gender, race, income, something like that. And then we throw these things like food deserts and equitable access to some of these other things we've talked about, water and energy and all of those things, clean energy, workforce, jobs, all those things probably fall under here. So I can try and put that into a statement if it's helpful, but I just want us to kind of think about that larger umbrella, I guess.
And if I could add to that, Lauren, somehow if we could figure out how to tie in transportation,
Yeah.
You know, that's a large statement.
Right. But I think that's a great point too, Lauren. You know, just the triple bottom line sort of bigger umbrella for all of it. And I do, you know, Alexia, I think that you know, food access and clean, healthy food is absolutely a key one under that. And you know, maybe again going back to the whole need for information and data, and we're also we keep talking about, you know, hearing from people and what are their needs, what are they lacking. You know, maybe that could help us, even if we identified some speakers or some key groups working on triple bottom line type issues. You know, maybe we could get some feedback in terms of you know, those needs. And then as we hear more needs, specific needs like clean food, you know, how can we as a working group think about some of the action items and strategies for helping to address some of those needs. So I know that we're heading to the end of the hour, so I just want to sort of close things up. So in terms of follow-up, we'll send out a survey within the next couple of weeks, and you know, hopefully we'll get it out before the holidays, but keep an eye on it. And then look for everybody's responses by early January, so that, you know, we know the different focus areas that you want to be working on. If we kind of break out into sort of breakout sessions or breakout groups on the different 5 main topic areas that we're going to start with, and then use that as our sort of framework for our next meeting, where we're going to try to, within the objectives, come up with some broad goals or broad actions. And then really, I think by February and March is when we're going to try to really come up with our specific strategies and specific action items within each of these areas. So hopefully that's a process that makes sense to everybody. I'll open up the floor, just one last opportunity to put in your 2 cents if you have other thoughts in terms of how we move forward. But that's what we're looking at in terms of a process. We'll send out that survey, try to get your feedback in terms of what you're interested in working on, and then we'll move forward kind of with those breakouts. And feel free to participate in one or more in terms of your interest and where you think you can help, you know, with informing the action items that we ultimately come up with.
That sounds good, Chris. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Alexia. Thanks, everybody, for your input today. And thanks again for the help on our last call with coming up with the definition for sustainability. You know, that was between last meeting and this meeting, that was presented to all of the other chairs and co-chairs. And so everybody's, you know, supportive of the statement that we came up with. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it, and look for that survey, and look forward to talking with you next year. So have a happy holidays. Bye, everyone.